This is Mitch, and welcome to the Real Estate Investor Summit podcast. I have a very special guest, Kevin Bupp, and he's with Sunrise Capital Investors. And this guy's had a long, lucrative career, about 16 years of figuring out what's the best cash flow for him. I think we all go through some stages. I think he's been through single family, and then he went to apartments, and then he did some other stuff. And then now he's really excited to be doing mobile home parks, which is a fantasy of a lot of people out there, to get a mobile home park and get it all running and get it all straightened out and make that cash flow. So we're going to talk to Kevin Bupp in just a minute, but I need to talk to you about taxfreefuture.com. If you're not investing through a tax-deferred or tax-free account, man, you have no idea what you're missing. Please check out taxfreefuture.com. There's about 37 videos over there. It explains how you can take a little bit of money to a lot of money pretty quickly, a lot of case studies. And the main reason you need to check out taxfreefuture.com is because you will not believe what your financial advisors are not telling you. Okay, got that out of the way. So how you doing, Kevin?
Mitch, I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Man, you're partners with Mr. Hartman, right, Jason?
No, I'm not. I know Jason quite well, but no, we are not partners.
Okay, well, there's our first cut. 5, 4, 3.
No worries.
5, 4, 3. All right, we got the money-making part out of there. Got the sponsors added in. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Mitch, I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you having me on the show, man. Looking forward to it.
All right, so, I love this topic. I've had some experience in the mobile home arena, but I never owned a park myself. Always wanted to. I'm actually, my cash flow vehicle of choice myself ended up being self-storages and boat storages, dry storages. But man, I always like these parks. One is you could kind of, the way I saw it, you could kind of double dip. You could get your park, and then you could also owner finance the box on top of it, and you could kind of like two kind of things going. But let's digress a little bit. 16 years of figuring out where the best cash flow is. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, and it's actually 19. I need to update the one sheet there.
Right.
It's been about 19.
Older.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting older. I just aged myself there, but I know I got introduced to real estate when I was 19 and bought my first single family property when I was 20, and started like a lot of folks do. And I started buying rundown properties. This was in Pennsylvania where I was born and raised, and kind of cut my teeth doing that. My mentor at the time really focused his business on cash flow. He had lots of single family and smaller multifamily properties, and he built a lifestyle around it. He was about 22 or 23 years older than I, and so he was much more further along in his life. And so he had the luxury, I guess, at that point of whatever he bought, he kept. I couldn't follow his model immediately, and so I bought and flipped. I bought, fixed, and flipped, built up some capital, and then started holding as much as I could. And then ultimately was in Pennsylvania doing this for like 2 years. And at that point, realized I hated the cold. I just was done with it, and I wanted to move somewhere sunny and warm, and moved down to Tampa, Florida, which is where I still live today. And that's really where my business took off. It was a much more active market, lots more going on, lots of just a larger market in general, more progressive area. And started buying single family properties, built up a pretty big portfolio of single family rentals. Also built a quite substantial mortgage company back then, and it was doing well leading up until 2008, and 2008 absolutely crushed me. I lost just about every single family property that I owned, in addition to about 500 apartment doors that I didn't lose, but ultimately had a hard time meeting the balloons when they came due and getting new debt in place. And so ramped up really fast, ramped down really fast, and ultimately was introduced to mobile home parks a couple years after the crash happened. In 2011, and studied it for about a year, bought my first park in Atlanta, a really distressed deal, and bought the next one, then the next one. Now today we own parks in 13 different states, and this is all we do. We own and operate mobile home communities. A lot of times we'll buy distressed ones that for many different reasons might not be operating efficiently. Could be could be the management. It could be the tenant base, which typically go hand in hand. Could be they got a lot of vacancies. Could be that the rents aren't at the market, and we go in and fix them. We go in and fix the problems, and it's treated us quite well, and we really like the niche. So
Well, it's not like most. I mean, it's not unlike most businesses. You're buying someone's problem, and then you got to turn it around, right? And
That's it.
you got to have an inkling of an idea where that turnaround is.
I think that's where the money's made in real estate in general. If you can figure out how to be an excellent problem solver, and it doesn't matter if you're buying mobile home parks or single family properties or commercial or apartments, whatever it might be, if you can figure out how to identify the problems and then figure out the solution better than the next guy. I think that's really where the wealth is made. Anyone can go buy a fully stabilized property at a 5 cap, right? Anyone can do that. There's no brilliance there.
5 cap would be good. I see these mobile home parks. That was my next question. I see these mobile home parks going at like 4 caps, and I'm going, who the hell buys this stuff at a 4 cap? I mean, that's assuming that their financials weren't fabricated at all. That it's a 4 cap. You know, if there's any fabrication in the profit and loss on that by the seller, then it's not even a 4 cap. You know, and everybody seems to kind of write their numbers to their favor. So that would scare the living hell out of me. So
to answer that question, who's buying the 4 caps? There's lots of institutional money in our space now that wasn't here necessarily 5 years ago, and their cost of capital is much cheaper than your capital or my capital, and so depending on where their source is, and they can make numbers work at 4 and 5 caps. Unfortunately, we can't, and I'm assuming you can't either. That's a little too skinny for us.
I mean. I'm going to ask you about a theory there lately, but that I've been thinking about lately. I'm not proud of the theory that I've come up with, but you know, you get a little older and you're getting ready to check out. You're running different kinds of numbers, you know. So, but I suppose that's the hedge funds and those people, they're parking money. Same thing in storages. You know, you look at a fully, 90% full storage place. I mean, they're not giving them away by any stretch of the imagination. They want like every drop out of them, and so. What's the secret to finding the distressed properties? Or maybe you don't want to share that secret, but
I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I will say that most of the hedge funds and institutional guys, the private equity firms, they don't like buying problems. They'd rather place, $100 million or $500 million worth of capital and stabilized assets. They need to buy at scale, and you can't buy at scale if every single property you're buying has underlying issues that need to be solved. And so I think that's one of the big benefits, at least of how we approach the space, is we like finding the problems that the institutional guys don't want to deal with. We fix those problems, and then ultimately our end buyer at that point can then be an institutional buyer that can pay very, very low cap rates. So we buy institutional grade parks that would meet institutional standards maybe 3 or 5 years from now. And we ultimately put the plan in place to get them to that level, so that not necessarily with the plan of exiting, but just knowing that we do have an exit plan in place, that there is someone on the backside that's willing to pay very aggressive prices for the product that we created. As far as finding them, this industry is still very fragmented. I kind of compare it to probably what self-storage looked like 15 or 20 years ago. Back then there were only a handful of big players. I think Public Storage, and what was the other big one that came in right after Public Storage? I can't recall. I always mess that one up. But in any event, it's different today. There's multiple REITs, multiple publicly traded companies that are in the self-storage space, tons of private equity. 20 years ago, it wasn't even recognized as a commercial asset. It was kind of like a redhead stepchild. Now it's included on all the different commercial investor reports that are put out on a monthly and quarterly basis. It's the real deal. And so mobile home parks are kind of going there. I mean, it's happened at lightning speed. Again, Carlyle Group, Blackstone, all the big PE names that everyone's familiar with, they're in our space now, and they're in it in a big way, and they're consolidating it. So with that being said, there's still fragmentation that we can take advantage of. We can find those mom and pops that are aging out of communities. They've owned it for 30, 40 years. Maybe they haven't run it as much like a business as you or I might run it, Mitch, and we can get in there and we can bring rents up to market. We can fix the infrastructure issues that they've been dealing with that maybe have been keeping new residents away from moving in. We can do a better job of collections, which I see as a common problem with mom and pops. They become friends with the residents. They give everyone a break. They don't do great at the collections. That's pretty easy to fix. We've got a very black and white, no pay, no stay policy. So we fix the problems, and then ultimately have something that a big back end buyer like a REIT or a private equity firm would have an interest in purchasing. Yeah,
and you said one thing earlier that you left out in that last run was the quality of people that are in there, because sometimes you got to start over with raise the bar a little bit, and the quality of homes that are in there, because sometimes the homes are really, really old and it makes the whole place feel downtrodden, People, just by the way, my bankers have asked me, why the hell would you invest in mobile homes? I mean, they're not going to be worth anything in a few years. And I said, that's not true. I mean, mobile homes will be worth something as long as you paint them and keep a roof on them and stop the leaks, just like your $1 million house. You don't fix a hole in your roof on your $1 million house, it ain't going to be worth anything pretty soon either. The problem is, I think, why mobile homes have that stigmatism that they fall apart is I think a lot of people that live at some economic levels in mobile homes don't have the sophistication to keep up, or the finances to keep up with the, you know what I mean? Because I still collect notes right now to this day on a 1978, double wide mobile home. It's beautiful. You wouldn't know because this one's been taken care of and kept up. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We have some homes in our communities that are from the 60s that have been maintained over the years, and the outsides look good. They're not all dented and rusted. They've had new roofs put on them. They've had new windows put in over the years, just like you would upgrade a normal single family home that's 40 or 50 years old. Same thing occurs. We've even changed, completely reconstructed floor plans in some older homes. The older homes that might have been a 3-bedroom that had really small bedrooms, we'll break it down to 2 bedrooms and make normal sized bedrooms out of it in a more modern floor plan. So you're right. I mean, a lot of it, as far as like mobile homes having an actual economic lifespan to where they're not necessarily usable or they're completely obsolete, that's not the case. But a lot of times it goes to the type of resident that's living in it, whether or not they have the means to actually maintain the home. So you make a very valid point there. But at the end of the day, they are personal property. Just like a car, that mobile home will never be worth more today than it was when it was new. However, with that being said,
I have an objection to that statement.
Yeah, I was about to give my one objection to that statement, because there is, there's always those anomalies that occur. I've seen some communities in very high-end, expensive markets to where older homes fetch a higher price today than they would have, 20 years ago. And it's more of the local market that they're in. Like, there's absolutely zero affordable housing, and people are just clamoring to get their hands on anything that is remotely affordable. So California, that happens a lot. Florida, that happens a lot. So anyway, give me your objection, because
you didn't say what I thought. You didn't say what I thought. So this is going to be a great addition to what you said. But you're talking about like market.
I'm talking about NADA value, like a value that's going to be. That the
like
bank's
going to the blue book that they have for them.
Yep.
Okay, so I buy these houses. I once went out and bought 140 mobile homes in 6 weeks after reading half of a Lonnie Scruggs Deals on Wheels book. I read half the book, got excited. There was some things going on in the state of Texas that had bankrupted the mobile home industry. They passed some laws in the name of consumer protection, and they made a law where you couldn't finance the home and the dirt separate from each other, that they all had to be on one loan, which meant now every mobile home buyer in Texas couldn't qualify for the loan, so they all went bankrupt. And all the mobile home dealerships went bankrupt. There was 70,000 repoed mobile homes in the state of Texas. And, being an entrepreneur, I had my nose in the wind, and I smelled that and said, you know what? I was buying them for $6,000 a piece if I bought 20 at a time. And they do depreciate on paper. So, and if I'm going out to speak to private individuals, I bring the NADA book, and then I negotiate my price based on what the book says it's worth. And usually people buy off on that, more or less. And then I take that book and I throw it in the trash can, and I offer owner financing on a used mobile home, where no one offers financing on a used mobile home. No one I know, except for me and some other private guys. I mean, you probably could get one if you had an 880 credit score and you had a personal relationship with your bank, but who does that? So I buy them at 6. I offer to owner finance them at 18. At the time, 14.5%, because the interest rate was high, because the balances were so low it didn't matter. And so what made the house worth more than it should be or would normally be thought of is because I offered terms. It's just like the sofa. I mean, that sofa is not worth $3,500. I'm telling you, it's not. But they give such great financing terms that people will buy the sofa for $3,500. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. So I did that. I borrowed $1 million, bought 140 homes, didn't touch most of them, and owner financed them for at least double, sometimes triple, sometimes quadruple, and created $4.8 million at 14.5% in 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So my problem was I didn't own the dirt underneath of them. And I could have been in a lot of trouble there if someone would have sold that park to put up a strip center or something, you know?
Sure.
I heard horror stories about that. I knew a guy that had 90 houses in a park, and they sold it to build, you know, the big Home Depot anchored strip center. And it just collapsed his business, you know, overnight, pretty much.
There's been some other big changes that have happened over the last 5 years. There actually is some decent consumer financing now. I wouldn't say that it's great by any means, and you don't need what you needed years ago is 700 plus credit score. And if that person had a 700 plus credit score, they'd just buy a house, right? They wouldn't be buying a mobile home.
Most of the time. Most of the time,
you're right. But there have been some changes. There's actually a lot of banks getting into the space now, but neither here nor there. One of the other big changes that has occurred is the Dodd-Frank and the SAFE Act as far as loan origination is concerned. So it creates a lot of additional challenges with truly being able to actually owner finance those notes and not fall within the radar of the government. And so we don't do that. What we do is we're buying these parks for the value of the land, like the revenue that the land actually creates. There is value to the homes, but it's not real. It's not where the real value is, at least being the park owner. So what we'll do is we want someone in that home. We want them to own it. We don't want to get it back. And so we'll make it very easy. We'll put together what's equivalent to like a rent credit program, which is like a frequent flyer mile program. So they live there. It's kind of gets around SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank, and essentially allows them between 3, 5, or 7 years, depending on the age of the home and the value of the home, to, if they make their payments on time, to actually own that thing free and clear. We'll get our money out of it and then let them sail off into the sunset and be a lot renter. We know if once they own that home outright, they're not moving anytime soon. I mean, we've got some residents that live in our communities. I think our longest tenure residents like 38 years, and we've got a lot that are 20 plus years. We got hundreds that are 20 plus years. So we know that once they own that home outright, there's no cheaper place that they can live in that market. Pick any of the markets we own, and there's no cheaper place that individual can live. So we want to get them to home ownership as fast as possible, even if it means we actually lose some money on the mobile homes. If we're into that home for $10,000 and we get a buyer that comes in with $6,000 cash, and we run a background, they're clean, they got a solid job, I will lose $4,000 on a home because I know that once they own that thing, they're not going anywhere, and it costs too much for them to move it. And so we look at it a little bit differently through some different lenses, but that's really where the value from our perspective is, especially on the backside. A lot of these institutional buyers, and most buyers in general, don't put hardly any value on the notes associated with the mobile homes, or on the value, like the NADA value. It's not an attractive part on the buyer end or the financing end for a new buyer to come in and buy the park itself. So we always focus more so on the dirt than anything else. But yeah, there's just like anything, Mitch, there's a million different ways to make money, and obviously
there is.
Yeah.
You got to kind of, one of the things is you got to master your niche. That's one of the things you wanted to talk about is you got to really focus on the one thing, because you can get spread too real thin, real easy, especially, and I don't make up many quotes, but I think I coined this one. I hadn't ever heard it before, but the hardest thing an entrepreneur will ever do is find one great idea and finish.
Yeah.
I actually happened to sell my, I created 140 notes on those boxes. I sold those notes to Clayton Williams. I sold 35 of them for $750,000, and then I sold another 13 or 14 or 15 for $350,000, and I paid back my $1 million, and I had $150,000 in the bank, and I had 90 mobile home notes free and clear. But I don't know that could happen again. You know what I mean? Like times change. He had just sold to Buffett. He had a vertical company, and he just he took that money and went right back into the mobile home business. So
Yeah, I mean, timing's everything. I mean, with different strategies, I mean, you capitalize on an opportunity that doesn't exist today as far as like a lot of repos. In fact, now it's complete opposite. It's very challenging to find used quality homes at reasonable prices, meaning that if I've got 50 vacant lots in my community in any market, and I want to go out and I want to find 20 used homes and actually get them at a reasonable price, it's very slim to none chance that that's going to happen. And unless you get very creative, you can't just go to a local dealer or a local bank and get their repos. Now you got to get really creative, and you got to utilize, the We Buy Houses strategies and, market and campaign direct to owner in different communities, and find the folks that need to sell their homes, they need to move or whatever it might be, and actually buy them that way. You can't just easily go to a bank and ask for their list of repos, because it doesn't really exist, unfortunately.
I'm trying to buy one right now as a place for an on-site manager to live on a storage place. And you're right. There's no more $6,000-$7,000 mobile homes that are in any kind of condition at all.
Right. Yeah, there are, but they're just really crappy.
Well, I mean, that's not even a consideration. But so what I've been doing was just going to the parks and saying, look, let me know when you got one that you're getting as a trade-in, and you, instead of moving it to your lot, just move it straight to my place. We'll save that double move, if we can. But it's still, they want $28,000 for those double wides. That used to pick them up for 10.
Yeah. One of the best places we have found to actually find used mobile homes, you got to be on it, and you got to have someone dedicated to it on a daily basis, is get on Facebook Marketplace. And then most of the sellers on there, there's a portion that are slightly motivated because they have to leave, but yet they don't want to continue paying their lot rent while their home sits there. And so they get very motivated very quickly as time goes on. They start asking 20 for it. You'll find very quickly that they're willing to take 15 or 12 because they've got a $400 a month lot rent that keeps, accruing. And they can't move to whatever their next stage of life might be. And so Facebook Marketplace has probably been one of the better places that we found used homes, but again, you got to be on top of it, and you got to be willing to pounce very quickly when you find someone that's willing to sell for a discounted price, and you got to have cash and make sure they got the title and make the transaction happen quickly, and then also quickly move that home off that lot so that you don't have to start paying the lot rent to that community, because your profits, your discount will go away pretty quickly if it sits there for a couple of months.
Make sure you run the serial number, check for any past due personal property taxes.
Yep.
Go through the whatever authority, like down here it's the TDHCA, Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs in Austin. But talk about, that's a hard place to deal with too. It's probably, I wonder if it's like that in every state. But let's talk about the power of affordable housing, because people think that when you and I or people like us are dealing in mobile homes, that we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and that it's a war zone, and that we're slumlords and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's simply not true, or doesn't have to be true. I mean, I'm sure, I know there's a lot of people that are slumlording it in this arena, but it doesn't have to be like that. I'm sure you're with me on that.
Yeah, no, and I'll give you the example. This is the example I always like to use when someone brings up, kind of the negative stigma associated with not just affordable housing, but mobile home parks. Is like, where you live, Mitch, you could go and, there's really rundown, rough neighborhoods that are the war zones. And on the other end of that spectrum, there's really high-end A-class neighborhoods where all the executives live. And then there's everything in between, right? The good, hardworking folks that just want to live in a good school district, have a roof over their head, and have a clean, safe, and quiet place to raise their family, right? Same exists in apartments. You got slumlord apartments that are in the wrong side of the tracks, really bad elements, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And you got the really high-end, newer built apartments that the executives live in. And you got the B and C grade stuff where the average Joe lives in, that again want the best for their family and their kids. Same exists in mobile home parks. We've got some really rundown stuff. That's not where we really participate. Those are really identified to me as trailer parks. I mean, they're in the wrong side of town. They've got bad elements in place, more of a transient crowd, like the motel dweller type crowd. And then there's some really high-end mobile home parks. I mean, especially in places like Florida and California and Arizona, we like to call those lifestyle communities. Those are not affordable housing. The communities that have, 3 swimming pools and palm tree lined streets. They've got activities directors. Lot rents are $800, $900 a month. Most of those are second homes for folks that live up north, right? They're winter homes. So that's not affordable, but it's a higher end demographic. And then you got basically everything in between. You've got the good, hardworking folks that want a good, affordable option, and that
particular
market they live in. They want a safe community, and that's who we cater to.
I was going to say, that's the one I want to talk about, because one is you usually have a fence or a wall around these communities, and you can be the island of paradise inside a rougher neighborhood and be the place like people want to go to. And the last but not least, I always looked at it like this, and I always felt very safe in that place, because if you can't live in one of our very nice mobile homes in a nice park, then you're under a bridge, because there's not, you don't get much cheaper than this, without going to a friggin' war zone, and even that, that life might look cheap, but when you get your car stolen and your air conditioner stolen, the rent is not so cheap anymore. So
yeah, that's it. So that's our goal. Our goal is to have the nicest community and be slightly below what the rest of the market is. So we give the best, the best option for folks in that particular marketplace, and give the nicest, so the best price, nicest community. Our turnover is next to none. In fact, the only time we ever get people that leave are they might pass because of age, or like they're forced to move out of the area due to a job relocation or whatever, a family event. That's about it. Very rarely.
Prison.
Yeah, or prison. Right. We don't get folks that leave because of price, right? It's not a price shopping issue to where they can get a better deal in a nicer location in another part of town or in another community. It just doesn't exist. So, you're absolutely right. And we love the space. I love serving that demographic. And really, if you're really good, it's all about your management style. I mean, if you're really good and you have a good screening process in place on the management end, you can filter out the bad elements. And this really exists in whether you're renting to A-class folks or D or F class folks or everything in between, right? You have a good filter system in place. Make sure that you're screening residents and you're eliminating the folks that have got felonies and that are convicted murderers and drug dealers and things like that. There's plenty of good folks right in that middle range that are in that that are in that socioeconomic class and need affordable housing, that are good folks. They really want to do well. They want to pay their bills on time, and they want a quiet place to live. And that's who we serve. And it's great because as you had mentioned, if they can't afford to live there, if they can't afford to pay the $300 lot rent, which is basically the average across the country. We've got some parks that are $500, some that are like in the low twos, but low 300s is kind of the average. There's nowhere cheaper in that market that they can live. You can't live anywhere for $300 a month. It doesn't exist.
So let's talk about this special leverage that you have, because there's a definite leverage that a park owner has. You could lower your rents and everything to get your park full, but once they're in there, it's not easy for people to leave. And so you can start. And I know you're a great guy and that you're going to have some compassion for these people, but there is that potential to really. You have to kind of police yourself, because you could raise the rents at that point. Once people get in, you kind of have them encapsulated. Mm-hmm. But if you raise the rents, do you have a traditional every year everyone's rent goes up 5% or 3% or?
Yeah, I like to answer it this way. Once we get to whatever, within range of what the market rent is for that given area, and then we typically follow CPI, which is, today it's like, I don't know, 1.5%, but, historically, 3%, give or take. And so that's kind of the annual model. So like once we get to a market rent standpoint, let's say market's $350, maybe when we bought the park it was $250. So we might a little bit more aggressively over the first couple of years get to that $350 mark. But once we get there, we have a normal annual, 3% give or take increase that comes into play. And that's what you'll find is common across the industry, typically somewhere between 3 and 4%. And it just, it keeps going from that point moving forward. And, obviously taxes go up, cost of operations go up, everything goes up, with inflation. And so we like just to maintain and stay in line with current inflation. So,
yeah. Tell us one of your best victories. Tell us about a park that was just, beyond your wildest dreams. Have you had that?
We've had a lot of them, but I'll give you one that we went full cycle on, and we don't sell much, so we're not buyers and sellers. We like to buy and then fix in the hole for the cash flow. But I'm always a seller at the right price, and typically the right price means like a number that doesn't make sense. Like I would never ever buy it for that, but someone ultimately is willing to. We bought a park. It's been about 3 years now. Up in Richmond, Virginia market. Picked it up from a guy that owned it for 33 years. He was actually a very intelligent, successful attorney in Washington, D.C. Had to practice, did really well, did a horrible job at managing this park, kept it up. So very unique in that he kept it up, spent a lot of money, putting improvements into the park over the years he owned it, but did a horrible job at the operational side. His payroll was way too high. He had like 4 full-time employees. This was like a 52 space park. It was not big. It really needed like half a full-time employee, right? 1 part-time employee to run this thing. And then in addition to that, he had no screening process. Someone had money and they could fog a mirror. He let them move in. So they were turning homes on average like 2.5 times a year. They'd move them in, they'd pay, they would stop paying after the first month. They'd have to evict them. They'd trash a house. They'd go and renovate it. So they were losing money like crazy. So we bought the park. The year we bought it, it had a annual gross income of I think $240,000, but the NOI was like $28,000. I mean, their expense ratio was like 82 or 83%. And so we went in immediately. We saw the opportunity. We bought the park at a fairly aggressive cap rate based on the NOI. But I knew I could fix it very quickly. And so we bought it like a 5 cap based on current NOI. We paid $650 for it, I believe. And within literally 3 months, we had that thing on track, which the first year we ended up with an NOI of like $160,000. So we increased it by, $130,000 just by firing majority of the staff that were just standing around collecting a check, putting a screening process in place so that, if you had money, you also had to pass a background and prove that you had a job that you could continue paying once you got in there and that you weren't a drug dealer. And things changed very quickly. Literally in 3 months, we were stabilized, and we turned around and sold that park in the middle of last year for just under 1.9 million. I think it was like 1.87 million. We paid $650 for it, put about 40,000 into it because it was nice. It was actually in good shape. It just was run horribly. Their expenses were way overloaded.
That's a great payday.
Yeah. So that was a good one. And it made, on an annual basis, after our debt service and everything, it netted just at about $100,000 a year. So after debt service and all the operational expenses, I think it made $100,000 a year for the first 2 years we owned it. And so it was a big one. We've had a few others like that, but that one was for a small park. It packed a big punch on the backside.
Let's go to the opposite side of the spectrum. Which one hurt you the most and why?
Yeah. I haven't really had any.
In line with the giveaways, and we're going to give away 21 biggest mistakes people make when purchasing their first mobile home park. So I want you to go to REInvestorSummit.com/deal finders. That's deal finders, plural, and go over there to the show notes and grab that report. So let's talk about the downside. I hate it when people talk about the downside, but they don't talk about the downside.
No, absolutely.
You all got horror stories, right?
Yeah. So this is one that I put some of my own personal money in, but it wasn't a deal that I procured myself. We were kind of working with I wouldn't call him a student. It was just another investor that was getting into the space. The deal was a little too small for us to take on operationally from a company standpoint, but I thought it was a good deal. I did minimal due diligence of mine. I only put, I think about $40,000 of my own money into it. So it wasn't a huge amount of money, and kind of coached this individual through the due diligence. And this one had the purchase price on front end looked like it was a no-lose endeavor. I mean, I'm talking, we got like owner financing with 10% down. We were paying $200,000 for the park. I think we put $10,000 or $20,000 down, and it needed about another $40,000 of capital improvements. It was I believe it was a 50 space park. It was in Pennsylvania. There was like 38 of the lots that were occupied. Lot rent currently at that time was like $280 a month, give or take. But they were running it through the ground. They'd owned it for like 40 plus years. The catch with this one, it was on municipal water, but it had a master septic system that fed the entire park. So all the sewage flowed to the back of the park, had a large, multiple different leach fields and septic tanks. The municipal sewer was at the front of the park, so we knew the connection was there, and we had an idea what it would cost to connect to it. And we thought, that's a backup plan. If we can get 5 or 10 years out of the septic field, perfect. We'll work on, basically holding back reserves so we could connect at a later date. The company we hired to do the due diligence on the septic, I'm pretty sure they just didn't do it. It was a local licensed company. They didn't do it. So within a couple months, realized that the septic system, one of the 2 leach fields, was completely failed. It wasn't failing; it was failed, and that there was an illegal pipe that the old owner had put into the side of one of the tanks, and essentially was disposing of effluent to the back of the park. I mean, basically flowing out to the back of the park, not into a leach field. And so that was a big one. That was a massive undertaking with hundreds of thousands of dollars of connecting to that municipal sewer source many years sooner than what we had anticipated. And it was really due to a lack of due diligence. I don't want to blame it on the buyer, but there should have been additional verification in place for him to determine that the inspection had been done, because it would have been identified that that if you do a load test in the leach field, you can quickly identify that it's failed. And then also this illegal pipe that was plugged into the side of one of the septic tanks was a big deal. And so we, again, I've got money in the deal, and he's still working on this today, doing the connection. The park has made no money, probably lost money month after month, for going on now 2.5 years. So, I'd say that the private sewers and the private water systems are a big risk. We own a number of communities that have that we personally own in our portfolio, but we spend a lot of money on engineers during a due diligence process. We hire licensed professionals. I mean, we spend a good deal of money before we ever even buy the park, making sure that what we're buying is in good shape, or if it's not, we have an idea of the life expectancy, but also the different costs that we might incur over the next, let's say, 1, 3, 5, 7 years. And we budget accordingly, and we underwrite that into our numbers so that we have the necessary capital from day one to inject into those improvements. So
that has been the horror story I've heard, is that the municipalities just force you to go hook up to the city sewer.
Well, this was a little different. The municipalities they're the ones that are making it very tough. They're making a bad situation even worse. They're finding it as a way to basically bleed the park dry. They're not allowing the connection to happen very easily. It's been, you think they'd be looking to collect their impact fees and their connect fees and all that. And they're making it incredibly difficult. And really, the only thing I can chalk it up to is that this is the opportunity for them to pounce in and shut this place down. They had not been happy with the old owner that owned it for 40 plus years. Basically, the husband died 10 years ago. The wife took it over, and she wasn't really into the running of a mobile home park. And so for 10 years, the thing just went downhill, and they didn't like it. The municipality hated it, and now's their chance. So.
Yeah, municipalities really don't like mobile homes, and like we've found some land that we thought would be good for some parks, and the city just doesn't want to zone it for that. And
Right.
I guess I got mixed emotions. I mean, I know from past experience how things have been, and I could see why the way parks were in the past. But you could set up good bylaws or whatever, and make sure that the park that's going in has a certain standard, which is a standard that you and I would want anyways for the most part. But municipalities traditionally don't like mobile home parks, so just be aware of that if you're listening out there.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the old owner, the prior ownership. I mean, did they comply? Did they keep up with the park? Did they, or are they just slumlords? And I mean, we've gone through multiple situations where we always try to meet with, if it's a smaller town, we try to meet with like the mayor and their council, city officials before we buy. If we're truly buying something that we feel has a negative connotation within that, that particular marketplace, we try to meet with the city officials, let them know who we are, show them our game plan, show them that we're going to inject a lot of money back into their community. We're going to improve the quality of living for the residents that are there and provide a better place for other residents to come, those that need affordable housing.
Yeah, and get a pulse of whether they're going to be on board to help you or they're going to fight you, right?
Half the time they're not on board. They're so fed up with how it's been run, they don't believe that a mobile home park can be nice. And the other half the time they're compliant and they work with us. And we've had some battles. We've continued. We had one instance where the mayor literally threatened us that if we bought it, that he would even make it more of his job to shut us down and for us to lose our investment. And we ultimately bought it anyway. And a year later, he called me and apologized, and even one of his, I think one of his staff member actually lives in our park, or they did live in our park for a couple of years. So he apologized and wrote a letter of recommendation to another mayor that we're having issues with in another state.
Wow.
We're very pleased. Yeah.
Well, you did a good job. You turned it around and had the good fortune to have one of his own staffers maybe living there. And, you got these guys all wrong. This park is nice.
Well, that's it. In his mind, mobile homes were the problem, and that you can never make them nice. And we showed him quite differently that with a clear plan in place, we spent a lot of money improving the park and put a screening process in. So we got rid of all the riffraff and only let good quality people live in there. It wouldn't be a drain on the resources. The police didn't have to go there once a day or multiple times a day. He quickly realized that it wasn't mobile homes; it was more so the operator that's the problem, and we fixed that.
Yeah, so we're probably going to wrap it up. I could talk to you probably for a week, and we could never topic again because you're very experienced, been around. But mobile homes are a good place for some newbies to start. You have to understand that there's certain licensing. You have to understand Dodd-Frank if you're going to own or finance. Make sure that you're compliant. But one thing cool about mobile homes is you can get into them, financing mobile homes pretty cheap. I think as cheap as you can find an investment vehicle probably that really has a great rate of return. I bought my first 100 houses on credit cards, and they weren't mobile homes, but this was 20 years ago in San Antonio. But you can still buy mobile homes on credit cards and owner finance them. And a lot of times, funding's half the battle, right? And if you're not to the point where banks or private lenders are really willing to finance you, but you have good credit, I still know people right now buying mobile homes with credit cards and then owner financing them, getting them set up, getting them straightened out, and now starting to go back and find the private lenders to get the credit cards paid off and get more of a amortized note. But it's a way to do things.
Absolutely. Again, as we mentioned, there's 1,000+ ways to make money in real estate. You just got to pick one and then master it. Focus.
One more really important question. When you went into this and you were buying your first mobile home park, did you get a mentor, or were you with someone who had done a lot of them before, or did you just freewheel it? And I'm going to guess you had a mentor, but I don't know.
No, I didn't have a mentor in the mobile home park space, but yeah, I had owned hundreds of single family, renovated, and also had a large portfolio, hundreds of single family properties. So I had built that business, and I owned just shy of 500 apartment doors, and I owned some other commercial real estate over the years. So, just through trials and tribulations of that other stuff, mobile home parks aren't rocket science. There's not necessarily anything that's overly unique about them if you've got a lot of other experience in other rental housing, I should say. And so no, I went through some training, read some books, and I didn't have a mentor per se. I had someone that, I guess a forum that I kind of was on with other mobile home park operators. I would ask questions and things like that. But most of it was really, hey, this is pretty simple. I mean, this is straightforward. Let's buy this park. It's run down. It's a great market. Let's get it in, get it stabilized, get units rehabbed, rent them, sell them, get a manager in-house here on site, and let's make it happen. Here's our pro forma. Here's how we think we're going to get there. And let's figure it out along the way. And that's ultimately what we did. So I have had many mentors in my life, so I don't want to act as though we did it, alone. But I've had many mentors, but nothing specific just to mobile home parks.
So you went in when you're very sophisticated. You were already very sophisticated. 500 doors, I'd call it sophisticated.
And I know way more today than I missed out on a couple opportunities that probably if I would have had a mentor that I wouldn't have passed on. Some deals we had tied up that I just didn't get comfortable with because I didn't know enough. And I probably missed out on a couple $1 million worth of opportunity from deals that we passed or killed because we couldn't get comfortable with certain aspects that an experienced operator would have been like, Kevin, you're crazy. There's an opportunity here, and here's how you realize it, and those risks that you're assuming, just throw them in the trash can. They don't exist, and here's why. Like if I had someone like that telling me, I probably would have, been even further along in the business. So mentors are incredibly important. Maybe I was stubborn. I don't know. I thought that I knew it all.
It might be interesting if you had a crystal ball and you could go back in time to find out if a mentor would have caught that septic tank issue. That septic issue. I
knew a good bit when we got in that deal. I just wasn't intimately involved in the due diligence. It was more me putting my money into it and with somebody that, it was their second park, and I was kind of overseeing it from a 10,000-foot view while I'm running my own business. And so if I would have been intimately involved, our company, we have a very checklist process that we go through due diligence. We sure would have caught it. Like it's inevitable. This was a different situation, and it's unfortunate because it's a very expensive lesson that this person learned.
Did you have any recourse against the inspector?
No, because it's a long story, but no, we did not, because they never actually documented the inspection process, nor was there funds that were documented. It was paid in cash. I mean, it was just a bad situation all the way around.
One thing after another, right?
Yeah. And so no, we didn't, and we ultimately should have. In a normal situation, when we do due diligence, we hire engineers that are actual legitimate company. We get bids, we get invoices, we pay via check or electronic transfer. And so there's documentation of emails, of funds, of everything, and again, another lesson learned for this person is that every single step of the way, assume that what you're being told is a lie.
Always.
And document everything. Document everything.
Trust but verify.
That's it. That's it.
All right. Well, so I really want to take time to tell everyone out there that, when you're talking to someone as experienced as Kevin, I don't know, find out what forum he's on or what forum these other experienced multiple park owners are on. Or get on those forums and learn. There's always a lot of nuance in the minutia, no matter what strategy you pick. And you got to drill down and drill down and drill down until you actually become an expert at it. And once you've been through it all or seen it all or heard it all, you have a really great chance of not making those mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes as best you can. This is Mitch Stephen with the Real Estate Investor Summit podcast. I want you to go to reinvestorsummit.com/deal finders, and there you can get the report 21 biggest mistakes people make when purchasing their first mobile home park. But also that's going to get you over into the show notes part, and you have some courses and some mentoring available for this kind of thing yourself, don't you? Or am I wrong about that?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got what I like to call is our business in the box, and it's really our entire process from finding deals to negotiating them to funding them to the operations on the backside, and it's called the Deal Finders Formula. Yep, and they can find that on our website, on the Mobile Home Park Academy website.
Well, where I was going earlier in the conversation is if this is what you want to be and this is who you want to be, and you don't have someone around you, get with some kind of pro that's done it before. The money that you spend will fail in comparison 99% of the time, because you can always measure a good coach by how much money they make you, but you'll never be able to measure how much money they kept you from losing if they've done a good job and there's nothing that you've lost. But I've had students call up and say, I'm not really sure that the mentoring was worth it. And I'll say, now wait a minute, let's go back. You were fixing to buy 2 houses that I told you not to buy because you're fixing to lose. And we all came to the conclusion. I said, you're trying to measure by how much I made you. You're not measuring by how much I kept you from losing.
That's it.
And your career may be dead right now, because if you'd have lost on those 2 houses that you were going to buy back to back from that guy, you won't be in this business anymore, because your wife would have shut you down 100 times after that, and your life would be miserable. And they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. And I go, yeah, it's not all about how much money you make. A good professional mentor or coach will try to keep you out of trouble, try to keep you losing money, and then if you're really do well, you'll be able to measure by some extra money that they pointed out in places that you couldn't see, and you can measure by that other stick. But a lot of mentoring and coaching is about keeping you from losing or keeping you from making bad mistakes. Because I was only one more mistake away from being out of a career that I've been in for 24 years. And I was only one more mistake away, because I lost on a couple of deals. They had put me really thin, and if I'd have made one more mistake, I'd have been out of this industry forever. I hired a mentor. He straightened me out, and I was actually trying to get out of the business when I called him, and he taught me how to stay in the business. That was 24 years ago and millions and millions and millions of dollars ago. And I didn't even hire that guy thinking that he was going to help me stay in. I hired him to help me get out, and he showed me what my problem was. And so please go to reinvestorsummit.com/deal finders and see what Kevin Bupp has to offer. If I'm going in that business, I'm going to call you. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you. All right, my friends, thanks for stopping by to get you some Kevin Bupp. We've been talking about mobile home parks and cash flow. Cash flow is king. They say cash is king, but really cash flow is king, because cash goes away. Cash flow just keeps coming right back every month. Anything you want to say to the young investors out there before we wrap it up, Kevin?
No, probably the last thing I'd say is just, first and foremost, Mitch, thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure being here, and hopefully your listeners, were able to extract some good value from our conversation. But I'd say this, and this doesn't matter what you choose, how you choose to make money in real estate, but, find that focus and find that one niche that you think is the best fit for you, that ultimately can help you achieve your end goal, whatever that might be. Everyone's got their own individual goals, and then focus on it. Don't get pulled in a million different directions. That happens, especially when you're surrounded by, social media, and there's always different events. God, I get on Facebook and I see at least 20 times a day a different, training program being touted, and that's fine. You can probably make money in every single one of those, but pick the one that you think is best aligned with your interest and your personality, and then give yourself, an allotted period of time, let's say 12 months, 18 months, to master it, to learn everything you need to know and actually prove the concept, put it to use and ignore everything else. It's really hard to do, but focus. And I really think those that focus in a particular niche and specialize in it and master it are the ones that are the most successful in those individual niches. That doesn't mean you can't go do something else at another point, Mitch. Once you get that business up and running, like I know you've got multiple businesses, but I'm starting like 3 things at one time. Like I'm going to flip houses, I'm going to buy mobile home parks, and then I'm going to develop self-storage. Like, good luck if you're starting them all at once. You're going to get pulled many different directions and probably find some type of failure in every different one of those areas because of lack of focus.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You guys, again, I want to give a thanks to my sponsor, taxfreefuture.com. Please go there, watch the 37 videos on how to grow your investment or your retirement tax deferred or tax free. You will not believe what your financial advisors are not telling you. Taxfreefuture.com. All right, Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you soon. By the way, you're going to be interviewing me on your podcast, right?
That's correct.
Just so you know, Kevin has one of the most successful podcasts on iTunes. It's called the Real Estate Investing for Cashflow podcast. And I'm going to be over there talking about, I think we're going to talk about mini storages and self-storages and boat storages, right?
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Just a different form of that cash flow. You chose parks. I chose that. They're both great. Figure out which one you like the best and drill down. All right, you guys, we're out of here.
Take care, guys.